If you work in finance in a startup and your goal is to become a CFO, the path is probably a bit different than what you expect. So this video is the first in a short series on how to become a CFO in a startup. And I'm going to walk through what startup CFOs actually do and the skills that founders are really looking for. And by the end of this video, you'll have a clear roadmap of how to move from, say, a finance manager or slightly above or a controller into a CFO role. My name is Alysha Randall. I am a CFO and I have been working in startups and scale-ups since 2006. And I also teach new and aspiring CFOs with my FLF program. So a lot of finance professionals have a similar longer term goal, and that is to become a CFO. But the path to become a CFO in a startup or scale up does look quite different compared to a traditional route. So in large companies, it's much more structured. You may move from, say, financial controller, finance director, eventually a CFO after lots of years. There are people in the business that can help you, mentors, the HR L&D program probably. There will be leadership workshops and lots of other things. But startups rarely work like that. In startups, people are often promoted much faster. So finance leaders are expected to take on strategic responsibility much earlier than in large corporates. And on top of that, the role is usually much broader than what you expect. So if becoming a CFO is your goal, then it's probably worth understanding what founders really expect from a startup CFO, and then potentially how you could build the right skills before that opportunity appears. So understanding what a startup CFO actually does. So many finance professionals assume a CFO role is mostly about reporting, forecasting, and managing the finance team. And actually, those things are part of the job, but that's not the core of the role in a startup. And actually, you spend a lot less time thinking about those things than everything else. So in an early stage growth company, the CFO is often responsible for cash management and runway planning. So it's thinking about, well, making sure that you don't run out of cash, basically, and what are all the strategies in order to ensure that that never happens. So that is on you. Fundraising and investor communication. So you're not just supporting the CEO and just doing whatever they tell you, you're actually driving the communication and the fundraising process. Strategic planning with the founder. I've heard, this isn't my metaphor, I've read it from someone else, but I can't say who that is because I don't remember. I'm a Formula One fan. So if a founder is the driver in a rally car, the CFO is the navigator sitting next to them. And you are very much the strategic planning with the founder. You're the navigator with the founder, and the two of you, along with the rest of the leadership team, are the ones that are working out what to do next with the business. You're building the finance function from scratch. So building a finance function perhaps isn't a surprise, but what might be a surprise, particularly if you're coming from corporate, is you're building from scratch. So if you're coming into a business that's relatively early stage and hasn't had a CFO before, you are starting with no policies, with no documentation, with no proper processes. There probably are processes, but they're just things that have just been cobbled together as the company's grown. And then you need to think about the people that you want within the finance function. And then helping the leadership team make commercial decisions. So being part of that decision-making process, not just hearing about the decisions after they've been made. So a CFO isn't really just responsible for producing numbers. They basically help the business in what to do next. And that is a very different mindset from traditional accounting roles. So what are the steps to becoming a CFO? Step one, become excellent at the fundamentals. So you do need to still have strong technical foundations. So that includes your management accounts, your financial reporting, budgeting, forecasting, cash flow modeling, understanding revenue and cost drivers. All of those things you absolutely need to be on top of. So I have said this before a few times actually, but it really hits home. When I was a fractional CFO, I was working with a founder that I hadn't worked with before. They had a CFO before I started working with her. And the reason why I was hired is because the previous CFO was let go. They were brilliant at strategy and brilliant at the commercial side of things, but every time their team sent a management accounts pack, nobody believed the numbers. And because nobody believed the numbers, the budget and forecasting that was built off the historical numbers, nobody believed either. And the cash flow modeling, they also didn't believe. Now, if you can't trust these numbers, basically you'll lose your job. So you cannot ignore the fundamentals. In our FLF program, underneath mindset and leadership, the leadership role, keeping the lights on is number one as far as your role is concerned. And it is the first thing that we always looked at when we started working with a new client when I was running fractional company. You cannot forget the fundamentals. If they're weak, it becomes really hard to earn the trust with the founders and the investors and the board. So as much as I say, the fundamentals aren't the main thing you should be focusing on, they should be already slick, well-oiled machine, and then you can move on to the fun stuff. But if this isn't working, then that needs to be your priority first. Get everything in order, make sure it's really slick, trustworthy, and it's working really well, and you have a strong financial operations team that is really looking at the numbers and making sure they're accurate. Then you can look at the fun stuff. Step two, learn how the business actually works. So one of the biggest differences between, say, a finance manager and a CFO is commercial understanding. And I do find that with people coming up the ranks, trying to teach them how to think commercially rather than finance and technically can sometimes be difficult. You either get it or you don't, or it just takes a bit of practice. So a really good CFO understands how the company makes money. So they know what drives the revenue growth, which products or channels are profitable, how marketing spend converts into sales, and where costs can scale too quickly. So if you want to become a CFO, you do need to spend your time understanding the commercial side of the business, not just finance systems and what your P&L looks like. So that does mean spending much more time with sales, with marketing, with your operational teams, and really leaning into the business partnership part of your role, which you can do from finance manager, financial controller level. You don't need to wait until you're a CFO. I have done some videos on business partnership before, so if that is something you want to spend a bit more time in, I'll leave a link above and below for that. Step three is getting comfortable with uncertainty, and this is very much a startup scale-up nuance. You definitely have a level of uncertainty, of course, with large corporations, but startups really, really uncertain in comparison. I personally worked for a startup scale up that became a listed entity. We did an IPO, and then you very much did have your quarterly predictable cycles. And I like the startup scale up chaos, so I went back to that. And just because I enjoy having a fair amount of uncertainty and having to think on your feet. So you might join a business where finance systems are pretty messy. Now, I will say if you're pre-Series A, this is almost guaranteed. Finance and systems will be messy. Reporting processes are inconsistent and forecasting assumptions change every month. So part of the CFO role is really bringing structure to that environment without slowing the business down. And that does require a skill set that is more than just simply maintaining the existing systems. never ever want to hear my team say that they're doing something a certain way because it's always been done that way. That is an absolute red flag for me. So it's always questioning the status quo and trying to find a better way, more efficient way, more accurate way of doing things. Step 4 is building leadership skills early. So a CFO is not just a technical expert, they are very much part of the leadership team. So that means you really do need to develop skills like communicating financial insights clearly, influencing decisions across the business, presenting to founders and boards and even investors, and then challenging assumptions when needed. So I would say that these leadership skills are absolutely critical if you want to be a CFO. Communication more than anything, because you will spend so much time communicating outside the finance function that it is just imperative that you really brush up on those skills. And also having the confidence to challenge as well is another big thing. Asking questions, sometimes asking really simple questions, such as, why do you think that? What is the definition of that? That is part of your role, is to make sure that people, leaders particularly that are in a very specific area, they really can get into the detail. You have that overall visibility across many functions and you can see how everything fits together. That's your skill set. And so being able to give that perspective to the rest of the company is really important and interesting to everyone else, and you're really offering some value there. Step 5 is to seek exposure to strategic work. So one of the best ways to prepare for a CFO role is to get exposure to strategic work earlier in your career. So this could include some things like helping to build finance models for fundraising or supporting investor reporting. It's not necessarily just the numbers here. I'm thinking more around the commentary that is used around the investor reporting. Participating in board meetings, even if that's just taking minutes, being able to attend and just take minutes. I mean, nowadays, if it's on Zoom, usually the AI does that, but if they're face to face, see if you can get a seat at that table just as an observer / minute taker. And then working on hiring or expansion plans. So even if you're not leading on those conversations, observing helps you understand how senior leadership team make decisions. And over time, that experience really becomes invaluable. So I would absolutely say being surrounded early in my career with really strong CFOs is the reason why I'm comfortable doing my CFO role now. Both that and lots of practice. So that is one of the big things about face-to-face working. Even if you're only going into the office once or twice a week, being able to see people that are in those leadership roles, doesn't have to be finance leadership roles. You may be the number one finance person, because the conversations they're having is the conversations that a CFO would be having because they're similar. Step 6 is understand that timing matters. So in startups, becoming a CFO is often about timing as much as experience. So many people step into the role when a company suddenly needs someone to own the finance function. And that is exactly why it really helps to develop those skills before the title arrives. So just because you get the title doesn't mean that you're going to get the confidence and the skills with the title. Absolutely not. You have to practice those things before the title arrives. So if you already understand and have practiced and have demonstrated strategy, communication, your understanding of commercial drivers, then when the business needs a CFO or a finance director, whatever the leadership role is, you will be up for consideration. If you don't demonstrate that, then you will need to change companies in order to get to that next level. And sometimes applying for a role that is a step up is sometimes harder. So I personally got many promotions within a business, particularly earlier in my career. I started in one business as a financial controller, then I became a group financial controller, and then I became a finance director. And I was working under a CFO for that. So I did have that leadership, that mentoring. And then in the next role, my role also expanded geographically just because the business was growing at a rapid rate. So definitely prepare yourself for that bigger role. If it doesn't happen, doesn't matter. You've got the skills, you can move on. So becoming a CFO in a startup definitely isn't about waiting for a promotion. It's gradually taking on more and more responsibilities of the role before you officially have that title. So that means building strong technical foundations, really developing commercial awareness, and learning how to communicate those financial insights that you discover clearly to the rest of the business. And the earlier you start building these skills, then the easier that transition becomes when the opportunity appears. Now, if you want to be a confident and skilled CFO or finance leader within the next 12 months, then I've got a 3-step plan for you. The first one is to subscribe to this channel. I do weekly videos just like this one, and we're right at the beginning of a series, so it's a perfect time to subscribe so you can see the rest of this particular series play out. The second one is to have a look at the financial leadership fundamentals, how to become a CFO in a startup or scale up. And the third one is if you want to take it to that next level and have Q&A sessions with myself, then you may want to have a look at our FLF program. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next week. Cheers.